Thank you, Rabina. Last year, over $1.5 trillion was spent on digital transformation efforts, $1.5 trillion. And according to World Economic Forum, only 1% of those initiatives are going to reach their goals. 1%, yes, you heard it right. So if you're at 10% with your institution, then, well, you're doing quite well. You're way above the benchmark. Is digital transformation in public sector different? Yes, of course it is. And we're going to unpack the digital transformation in public sector throughout the event today. But before we do it, let me walk you through the different stages of evolution of public services and also highlight 6 trends that we've identified that are going to impact your own digital transformation efforts. I need to take you on a journey. So imagine you wake up one day and realize there's a particular social challenge that needs to be addressed, and you, as a leader of a public service organization, need to address it in a specific way. Well, you're just witnessing Government 1.0, the emergence of services, where you, as that leader, create a service. You focus on quality of this service, and you focus on making sure that this service is accessible. If you do your job well, the service is up, and you can go to sleep. You sleep well, or at night, you twist and turn, and you start to ask yourself, is that service that I just created, that I made available, is it available to everyone? Well, when you wake up the next day, you're going to start focusing on 2.0, where we're looking into industrializing of public services. This is when you ask yourself, how can I scale my service? How can I scale it up so that more citizens, more customers can access that service? But also, how can I scale it or change the way it's being delivered or accessed so that people with different needs can also access those? So you create this service that now is accessible to everyone. Equitability is the key word here. You're happy, you go to sleep. And then at night you think, was this correct? Or did I just create a perfectly equitable service that's also cash burning, resource guzzling, and potentially not a very efficient service? This is when you wake up, you become a government 3.0 servant. You focus on automation, you focus on efficiency, you create a very lean, very efficient machine of your services. You focus on practicality. And when you focus on practicality, it might mean that you cut out some parts of that service. It might mean that you make it less available to some groups, but that's government 3.0. And then you go to sleep. And you dream about your service. It's lean, it's efficient. It might be cheap, but it's a good cheap in this case. But it's also alone. And then you realize government, citizens do not access individual services. They need more than that. They need to work with other services. So when you wake up the next day, you're at the government 4.0 stage that we call digitalization. On this stage, you're asking yourselves, how can I partner with other departments within my government? You focus on the business model. You focus on making sure you orchestrate, you facilitate, you activate, you create a one-stop shop, maybe even a no-stop shop for your services. You focus on the whole of government approach to delivery of your services. And then you go to sleep. And you have a nightmare. You have a nightmare about Facebook having a whole of Facebook approach to you. You have a nightmare about a hospital having a whole of hospital approach to you. Maybe QUT having a whole of QUT approach to you. And that makes you realize that maybe at this stage, Government 4.0, you've been focusing on the wrong thing. You've been focusing on the business model and the organization, but forgot who the services are for. That makes you wake up, and Government 5.0 is all about personalization. It's all about you realizing that perhaps it's not the business model, but the citizen model that you should be focusing on top of all of the previous one, right? There is desirability. You want citizens or customers, however you want to call them, to want to use your services, not just have to use your services. Instead of whole of government approach, you have a whole of life approach. Now, it's not easy. To have a whole-of-life approach, you need to go outside your bubble, your institution, your department, your government. You need to go outside and partner with other governments, whether it's different levels of governments, whether it's, other institutions. You need to think about the individuals that use your services, the organizations or people. And this is truly the first time you live to your mantra of being fully citizen-centric. At this stage, we think Government 5.0 is the beacon, is the stage that we want a lot of services to evolve to. Not all of them are there, not a lot of them have to be there. It's absolutely fine for some of your services to be at 1.0, 2.0, and so on. You just need to have this map. And we're giving you the map so that you can understand a bit more where your services are and how you can manage them. We've been thinking about the future of public services and what those stages are. We've been thinking quite a lot about them, actually since 2015. So for the past 4 years, we've run 23 so-called innovation sprints with all levels of government, reimagining the future of delivery of public services. We've worked with over 500 government executives, worked with them, learned with them on exploring this. And this all led us to developing this framework. Now, that's not it really. Like I said, there's a framework, 1.0 to 5.0, but there are also trends that are going to impact your success in digital transformation. Think about all those keywords: mobile first, digital first, online first. As we move away from that face-to-face delivery of services, we move towards customers dealing with forms, with processes, with reports. But recent reports show that citizens, humans, customers actually require more human touch rather than less. And there are organizations that start to recognize it. Banking sector, industry sector, they're sort of reversing that direction. They still automate a lot of what they do, but they make sure that the human face of the machine is what they offer to their customers. So as Government 5.0 leaders, you should be thinking, how do I create that human face of the machine? I'm not trying to say stop the automation efforts, stop the digitization efforts. All I'm saying is for some services, whenever there's an interface where citizens interact with you, ask yourself, can I put a human there? So the automation is happening behind, but the interaction is still within a human. Or when this is not an option, when you deploy technologies, start to ask yourself, can I talk about effectiveness of my services? Not effectiveness, effectiveness. What feelings do they generate? Can you measure those? Do you measure effectiveness of your services? Not effectiveness, effectiveness. You should be expecting from your algorithms the same that you're expecting from your human workers to create that connection with your customers, with your citizens. We're seeing a lot in the world these days when it comes to automation of government decision making. Right? Rules as code are all the rage at the moment. There are all sorts of other wonderful projects where, say, tax agencies help to or try to identify those taxpayers who might be likely to default on their payments. And those decisions, the identification might be done by the machine. But obviously, this is a big challenge. And a lot of jurisdictions are introducing the so-called right to explanation, which is a right for a human, when they're a subject of an algorithmic decision, to be provided with an explanation of why this decision happened, or reasons for this decision. This might be simple in some cases where the algorithms are, very simple decision tree type of algorithms. But when we're talking about black box types of algorithms, I think machine learning, artificial intelligence, sometimes explaining why a decision happened is very, very tricky. So as leaders of Government 5.0, I would like you to think about human checksum as a concept where you introduce a human into an algorithm decision-making process, at least initially, and I'll talk about it in a second. But you introduce them so that they can intervene whenever an algorithm makes a wrong decision. Think about T-shaped people. T-shaped people are people who can connect to other people within your governments, within your departments, who understand the strategic, the operational aspects, the legislative aspects, and those people should also have the digital skills to explain the decisions of the algorithms. Do not outsource 100% to algorithms. Treat your algorithms, at least initially, just like you would treat interns. They're joining your organization, and you don't know what might happen if you leave them alone. So stick with them and create a team, create a human algorithm team. Make sure that the humans and the algorithms, they each deliver on what they're good at. Heard about Nokia? They started as a pulp mill. Toilet paper was what they were selling at the very beginning, right? Then they moved to rubber, electronics, selling gumboots. Then they created mobile networks. At some stage, they started building mobile phones. That's how we know Nokia. Then we all know the story. They sort of, dropped the ball over there. They're back now to, they had a bit of software play, and now they're back into building networks again. Gone are the days when you would expect a business to be born in an industry, thrive in the same industry, and then die in the same industries. Businesses move from industry to industry. They follow their customers. Heard about Virgin? They started as a record label, Virgin Records, right? Now we have Virgin Active, Virgin Australia, Virgin Books, Virgin Care, Virgin Travel, and dozens of other companies. Virgin follows their customers. They focus on what the customers need, and they fulfill their needs. Netflix, another example, right? Started with DVD rental, streaming, then media production. Now they're going into virtual reality. Why are governments not thinking like this? Why are we stuck with the departments that we know, Department of Health, Department of Education, and so on and so on? Shouldn't we be creating maybe virtual departments of life events? I want to talk to a department of I just had a child. I want to talk to a department of I want to start a business and be successful. Right now, I need to span all sorts of departments. The second law of thermodynamics states that the level of disorder in the universe is steadily increasing. And guess what? Physics, thermodynamics also applies to public sector. The complexity of the world grows. Remember the times when you could have a policy which would say for a car that has more than 6 cylinders, this is the rule. For a car that has less than 6 cylinders, this is the rule. Where guess what? Some cars do not have cylinders anymore. Gone are the days where you could look at a car and tell whether it's a taxi or not, where you could look at an apartment and tell whether it's a hotel room or not. Every day, public sector employees, public servants, they need to cope with this challenge of what next is coming tomorrow. And look, it's impossible to predict the future, despite of what sometimes futurists might try to tell you. But what you can do is try to explore possible futures. And we call it Longshot incubation. Longshot is a term for what precedes a moonshot. Longshots are ideas that are highly risky, highly easy to fail, and they create that basis for future growth. Now, it's very, very hard. It's practically impossible to run longshots within the government, right? Think about taxpayers' comments, right? But you need to. You need to figure out how to explore this space, how to explore the possible futures, the continuous next. And perhaps it means outsourcing that Longshot incubation. Perhaps it means working with others, maybe with universities, maybe with public sector that will explore those possible futures and help you identify what direction to take. So that whenever a disruption comes, it's not a disruption for you because you've already explored the possible future. We all heard about digital twins. Digital twins are a concept introduced in Industry 4.0. It's all about taking a physical entity and moving it into a digital world. Buildings have their digital twins. Entire states are starting to have digital twins, where you can basically look into the geospatial information. You can read the data coming from sensors and understand what is happening there. What we're suggesting is that there's a huge opportunity for creating digital twins for governments that not only involve geospatial and sensor information, but also socioeconomic data. This will allow us to perform so-called mass policy simulation. Imagine being able to say, hey, what would happen? What if I banned this particular type of plastic? What if I created a new license that people could apply for? Could I run this simulation in a system like that? We're already doing it with some of our friends here at Queensland Government. We are exploring those opportunities. The most beautiful thing about it is you do not need to experiment or test new policies on a living system, but you can have that first try on a system that's just a virtual representation of a living system. Trend number 6, and possibly the most important of those, is all related to the trust paradox. Governments sit on a lot of citizen data. And there are beautiful, wonderful things that could be done with the data. There's great powers that the government has. And as Uncle Ben says, with great power comes great responsibility. So what could happen? What could go wrong? This is a challenge for the leaders of Government 5.0 to consider what we call the art of digital. We've covered this topic in depth, and when you receive the report on Government 5.0 tonight, you'll be able to read more about it. But this is the exploration of the aspiration, responsibility, and trust. The art, aspiration, responsibility, and trust in the digital age. As public servants, as Government 5.0 leaders, you need to consider the art of digital as an important aspect of all your work. So when you think about this evolution, and remember that in any government institution, there might be all sorts of services. Some of them will be at 1.0, some of them will be at 4.0 or even 5.0. You need to manage them. You need to be aware where they are. You need to decide where you want them to be. But that's a framework that allows you to understand that complexity. Then you need to think about those trends, those digital business and social trends that might be impacting the success of your digital transformation. And if you do it well, hopefully the 1% that I talked about just a few minutes ago, you'll be exactly there among those successful digital transformation projects. Thank you.